Welcome back to Hidden Wisdom. I'm excited to still be talking to Kyson Kidd. Kyson, thanks for going round 2 and having another conversation.
Yeah, so excited.
So today we want to talk about something that's a little bit vulnerable and a little bit uncomfortable for us, as well as I think just kind of culturally in the church and even out of the church as well. We want to talk about the idea of men and the masculine presiding. So in preparation for our conversation, I put a post in the Hidden Wisdom discussion group on Facebook, of which if you haven't joined, you should, because we have some fun discussions in there. But just asking, like, what are some questions that men have, that women have, that they would like to understand better from this conversation, talking about the divine masculine side, where we typically talk about the divine feminine. And some of the questions that we had come through were about what it means to preside, how men learn to preside, what is the dynamic between a husband and a wife when it comes to presiding, what is unrighteous dominion, and how can men step into this role of presiding in a way that, well, I will say my question, this wasn't a question, but my question is, how can men and women step into presiding in partnership with each other and in a balance between the divine masculine and feminine? I don't know if that was the intention of the person who was asking these questions, but that's what we will talk about today. So, Kyson, let's just start at the very beginning. A very good place to start, as The Sound of Music has taught us.
The beginning of this concept?
The beginning of the universe. No, let's just start at the beginning of these questions, right? So let's talk about, what does it mean to preside, right? And so I assume that the context for this is in part coming from the Proclamation on the Family, where it says specifically that one of the jobs of men and husbands in the home is to preside, and that is specifically relegated to men. It's not under kind of the feminine side of the things that are enumerated in the proclamation. And I know that this is something that can be very painful for women. And I think it's also kind of culturally misunderstood and maybe not totally in alignment with our heavenly parents and their intentions. So with that context, when you hear the word preside, what does it mean to you? And what does it mean in the context of the broader discussion we've been having about divine masculinity?
Whew, yeah. So, I mean, I'll start with saying, like, I'm not going to pretend to be an authority of like the truth. Like, I'm a dude who I am a truth seeker. I think that's, as far as like my qualifications go, I think my greatest qualification is I'm just looking for truth. I'm not afraid to change my mind tomorrow if God, gives me guidance on something. Mm-hmm. Sweet. And at the same time, I'm with you that there's a lot of attitudes, or there's like things I hear that's like, it feels like there's something wrong in the way we're saying this, in the way we talk about presiding. Like, it does feel weird sometimes. So yeah, what's the truth? Where is the truth? Are there places where truth and untruth have been mixed together? A question that I wrote, my first question is, what does it not mean? What does presiding not mean? And I think it doesn't mean it can't. True presiding cannot step on other truths. So it doesn't mean making choices for other people. It doesn't mean playing Satan's plan and controlling everybody. It doesn't mean taking accountability for stuff that's not yours. It doesn't mean replacing someone else's personal revelation. Do you have any others of what it doesn't mean?
I think unrighteous dominion is a good phrase to use for all of those things, right? Yeah. And yeah, I think unrighteous dominion is the opposite of the way that I think God and truth would look at the word presiding, or to preside.
Nice. I love that. And then another one that it's not is, I think we've accidentally sometimes simplified it down to like the tiniest, most inconsequential thing in the world, which is like, who's going to say family prayer tonight? That I'm presiding. And so I chose the prayer, and to say that's the whole sum of like the truth of presiding is I choose the prayers. It's like very fragile. It's like, okay, dude, you know what I mean? So that's my opinion, is sometimes I'm like, in a family setting, especially, I'm like, oh, dude, I'll ask my 2-year-old, like, Graham, who do you want to say the prayer? Do you want to say it, or I'll even ask who feels called to say the prayer today. Anyone feeling excited to pray? And if 2 of my kids say it, guess what? We're having 2 prayers. You know what I mean? Like that's so presiding. Maybe that leads me a little bit to like, I think presiding is a directing type of leadership. It's an inviting. And maybe it's even like a stewardship over one of my primary, as the father, and with a masculine role of presiding, it's one of my primary focuses is to be tuned into where we go as a family. And I'm tuned into like the counsel of like asking my wife, what do you feel on this? What makes sense to you? Like she might be tuned into other things where she's tuned into like the nurturing of our kids. And then I'll go tune in on that sometimes, for sure, or all the time. But like one of my primary things is to be like, I'm thinking about where are we headed as a family? I'm Lehi in the wilderness. Where are we going? But I hesitate to even say that because we have such connotation with a lot of the leaders of like, oh, that's Lehi, and I hope his wife follows what he says. Like I don't do that. I don't do that with my wife. My wife's an incredible person. She has incredible insight and empathy that I don't have.
That's a question that I have too, is like, okay, so I agree with you. I like this idea of directing and leading. And I do think that is a big part of the masculine role. It's a leadership role. I think that we can get, the masculine is tricky because I see these ways that it is like balanced, healthy masculine that is integrated with the feminine, and then really unbalanced, dominating, dangerous masculine that kind of tries to contain and manipulate and control the feminine, right? And so when I say leading, you can go both. You can go either path, right? Like you can lead as in the feminine, maybe my wife needs to sit down and be quiet and just do what I say, and I'm making the decision, and like blah blah blah. Or you can do the other way, which is, I see more of this example of what you're saying, which I think is more of the intent of our heavenly parents, is that we learn how to counsel with each other and come to agreements together, where the feminine voice is respected and hearkened to in a way. And I think that we see that leaders, what's interesting is that a leader can only lead if someone is willing to follow them. And that's kind of the invitation of the feminine, is, are we going to choose to follow a certain masculine? And in that way, the feminine really enables the masculine. Without her, he would have no power. He would have no ability to lead, right? And so it's a chicken egg thing. It's not like, well, this is better than this, or this is the real leader, or this isn't. I think another way to think of it, when I think about presiding, I think a little bit of my buddy Todd McLaughlin, who talks about presiding being a stewardship where you are basically becoming accountable for your family in a bigger sense. And I relate it to the principle of a watchman on a tower, right? That the one presiding is supposed to be able to be the watchman on the tower and see these, as you were saying, these are the future needs of our family. This is the direction that our family is going to. Here are maybe some threats that are in the area that we need to be aware of, and that we need to take counsel on, of how to address to protect our family. And the women in that equation are the tower. They are the thing that is hopefully uplifting the masculine, enabling his leadership, helping him have a bigger perspective than he would have just on his own, right? And so, I don't know, do you have any thoughts about like these two different directions that we could take a leadership role?
I like your example, and just a counter example to play with is like, what if we're both watch people in the towers? Yeah. And we're watching different things, right? My primary thing I'm watching for is like danger, protection, providing, financial, whatever. And my wife is watching for like creating in the home, creating community, connecting our nurturing kids. And then what's so cool about that is if we have two different towers, but we're connected and communicating, you have like a triangulation thing going on where, they do that for forest fires. You have two different towers tell you the angle of the fire, and then you can tell where the fire is exactly, versus like just kind of guessing, and so maybe even you tie both of those together and say, for the woman, on her side, I'm the tower for her. I support the stuff she's tuned into, and she supports the stuff I'm tuned into.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. I like that too. That's great. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I think that at the heart of all of this, my understanding, my belief is that the Most High God, our heavenly parents, and in their pattern, the true pattern of presiding, I think, has to do with partnership. That as we're talking about, it's not that like there's a hierarchy, right? And like the man is in charge and then the woman is under him and then the kids are under her or whatever. Or, that can even look different ways too, depending on, what direction we want to talk about it in. Where you say, well, if there's a boy who's 11, but he has the priesthood, maybe he's above his mom, in some ways or whatever. But I think that hierarchy isn't the point behind presiding. I don't know. That was kind of a cringy example. Do you have any thoughts about that?
It's a great example because it's something it's a thing that people say. So I think it's really important to bring up. Harkening back to like a truth we talked about in our previous episode is I do not believe it's possible to be above or below somebody else. There is no, like, as far as worth goes. Mm-hmm. I mean, something that's maybe a cool, like, experimental journey for everyone, a question to consider is I want to know what you think your heavenly Father would say if you stood before him and said, "Are you better than me?" And obviously there is a piece of that answer that's like, well, duh, yeah. Mm-hmm. But also there's a piece of it there's something weird where we're so quick to be like, yeah, he's way better than me, and Jesus way better, because what we're secretly talking about is he's worth more than me. Like, if I was lost, no one would care, but if Jesus was lost, oh no. And because let's look at like these other truths we know. God is no respecter of persons. The worth of every soul is great in the sight of God. And so, and what we know about parenthood, if my 4-year-old daughter was like, "Dad, are you better than me?" I think my first response would be like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, tell me what's inside that question for you." And it's almost the feeling of like the question doesn't really compute. Like, am I better than you? Well, you're a child of God on a journey. So am I. Like, especially outside of time, right? If time is just this like construct that's been given to us to grow here on earth, in the eternities, God is inviting me to be equal with him. I think it's kind of scary, or at least he wants me to have everything he has. So tell me how that's different, have everything I have, but make sure you remember that I'm better than you. Where, there is a channel of like, I do go to God as my source. That won't change. Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of like weird stuff in here. And I think what this conversation invites is for everyone to consider, again, are you afraid of not being better than people? Like, are you depending on being better than someone else to make you feel good? And just a slight tangent, the places we were tempted to do that is husband presiding over your wife or over your children. Another place we're tempted to do that is callings in the church. Oh, he's a stake president. He's a bishop. He's this person's an apostle, so they must be better than me. I haven't seen any true scripture to back that up. And then we also do that with, people that don't believe the way we do, or people outside of the church. We're like special and above, standing on that ramiantum for a little Book of Mormon reference. So I think that's really what any place where presiding puts you literally as above or worth more than someone else, I think you better be super careful and turn away from it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think that would take a little bit of introspection, right? Because I think on the surface, no one would say like, yeah, I'm worth more because I'm higher up, right? But underneath it all, that I think that is what the belief is that because I'm above you, I am worth more, right? And so, that would take a little bit of digging to unearth that. So this conversation is so tricky because it really hits on some deeper wounds that I think exist for both men and women, both in the culture of the church and also in the history of the world, right? Is that this is a world that has known inequality between men and women, and continues to in some ways. I'm not going to say that it's the most imbalanced that it's ever been, but it's still pretty imbalanced, especially when you look at it not only from a man woman perspective, but from a masculine feminine perspective, right? Where it's like men and women both prioritize masculine energy, kind of like what we talked about last time of like my worth is derived from what I do, from my production, that I need to be action oriented, that I need to be fighting, that I need to shut down my emotions, that I need to take care of myself. I'm not worried, like I can't have compassion because there's scarcity, right? Like there's all of that is prioritized in men and women in this world right now. Um, and the feminine has been neglected. The feminine being the nuance, compassion, community, unity, relationship, understanding emotion and being willing to feel emotion and intuition, the knowledge that can come through spiritual gifts that isn't maybe quite as logical and analytical, right? Like we're kind of hitting on this wound where I don't think people want to admit sometimes that there has been an imbalance, but there has been. And I think for men, I mean, I talk a lot about and to women, right? And we understand some of the pains that come when you become aware. I wasn't always aware. Like I wasn't like I'm not a political feminist. I was raised by a very masculine dad. Like I never was one to look at women and like be like, oh, we've been really victimized for a lot of history, which is true. I don't think we should choose to be victims, and I wouldn't postulate that. But anyway, we kind of explore that perspective a lot, and I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts from a masculine perspective, where the masculine has been preferred. And maybe that's part of why, like for men, when we're talking about this conversation about presiding, maybe it's a little bit painful to look at that as like, actually, you need to be focused on partnership, right? Like, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pendulum swings, right? So you have two
Mm.
groups. I think you do have a group of men who are like a little bit in the typical like macho man, uh, trying to like be above women as a whole and above their spouse. Like men know how to run this, whatever. So I think you have that. And then I think you also have a pendulum swing of another group, which I tend to believe is more common. That could be my own bias because that's the group I have been in. And the group I mostly work with are men who see the story of history and society where like, oh, men have treated women very terribly through history. And so there's almost this feeling of like, whatever you do, don't be like those men. And it's
Mm,
turned to this fearful, like since we were children, right? And we've gone
mm,
through this really, like a lot of people in the last couple generations have lived through like, oh, you need to be chivalrous and open the door for women and like give them your seat. And then also like, don't treat me like I'm less than you or you're a chauvinist pig. So there's this weird like stuckness for a lot of us where it's like, I don't know how to treat
mm,
women because I'm going to get in trouble either way.
mm,
And so you mix that with like a lot of that phrase of like, make sure you're not like those men that treat women poorly. And so then I think we go to like, oh, well, the best I got is to people please to women.
mm, mhm,
That's my best hope of being a good man. So I think you do end up with like both sides. And a connected thought is that like you can even be split within a person. Like
mm,
at the start of my marriage, I remember me and my wife were, like realizing like, wait a sec, I'm really controlling when it comes to uh what was it, like when it comes to church. I'm like, we got to be on time because bad families are late or some like really scary thing there. So I was
yeah.
very controlling, like are we not going to read scriptures or pray? And I was in a ton of fear and probably unrighteous control in that way. But then my wife would flip flop with me around like money. She'd get freaked out about money and start to control, or time, or who we spend time with or whatever. So we had like our flip flops where she would control me when she's afraid, and when I was afraid I'd be controlled. And then we would switch to like, now I'm afraid and I'm going to control you.
Mm,
So I think they're just, yeah, two extreme examples that don't work well. And so
mm,
I
mhm,
love your thought about partnership. It is so interesting how scary partnership can feel, though, because it's going to
mm,
require vulnerability. So anyway, I'm kind of reiterating what you said, that I think a lot of men are afraid that they will have to look at themselves, They will have to take accountability. If they're going to treat someone as a true equal, it's going to require some self-reflection, and that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, and either they're gonna have to temper their self-image if it's dominating, or they're gonna have to improve their self-image, right? If it's like putting women up on a pedestal saying, "Well, my wife is so much better." And I think maybe there's a lack of accountability in that too that might be comfortable, right? Of like, well, my wife is so great, so why do I need to try? Like she's got it, right? She can take care of everything. Like there's almost I don't know. I don't want to sound like I sound like I'm criticizing men. I don't mean to come across that way. It's just an observation of like there is kind of this cop out of like let's look at it like Elders Quorum and Relief Society, right? Where it's like, well, the Relief Society is so great. They know how to plan, they know how to organize, they've got the budget. Like we're just gonna let them do it, right? And we'll show up and set up chairs or something like that, right? Do you think that that happens on like more of an individual basis, where like sometimes men like maybe they are so much in the don't hurt women place that they pedestal women, and that is also damaging?
Yeah, I feel like Satan's been kind of weaving backward stories ever since the beginning.
Mm.
Because you totally have that underlying story of, well, women are naturally good. Like all this weird stuff. Women are naturally good, and so men have the priesthood because
And
we're
also
not
naturally
good.
evil. We're both, yeah.
Yeah, look, women are
Uh,
better and worse, right? It's all
mhm.
this. That's why I think one of the most like discerning truths out there is that we are all equals, because anywhere
Mm.
where we go above or below, Satan gets power. It's a secret combination. Because yeah, there's the thing, right, of like, oh, my wife is so much better than me, and everyone goes, oh, yes, of course she is better than you. But then like, and I'm also the one in charge of this, I'm the one in
Right,
power still. I'm presiding.
right.
It's like, dude, which one's true? So I think,
Mm.
yeah, I think it has been a lot of pendulum swings. um I think that there are a lot of women who also struggle to give up the power of the
Yeah.
emotional side. Like,
Mm.
what if my husband isn't dependent on how I feel, or if he's not like responsible for my emotions, then it can get really scary too. Like, who's going to save me? Trying to think, there's like another halfway formed thought. Mostly I would say standing as equals in a partnership is just very exposing, and you're gonna
Mm.
we all have to face ourselves when we do that. um I think guide me if you want to go to a different question first, but another like principle that feels true to find like the truth about presiding is just thinking about how Jesus would preside.
Mm.
Because you see at a time when women were treated much worse than now, as much less, and as property and all those things, he treats women with such respect.
Mm. Mm.
There's times when he stands up for them and corrects one of his apostles, like, what's wrong? What does it mean to you if she wants to like wash my feet, or serve me and whatever? So I don't know. I think a lot
Mm.
of the weird things we see in our culture of today they kind of disappear if you imagine Jesus standing up there going, oh, like saying some of those weird things.
Yeah.
um it's especially powerful from him who we consider to be the very best, the best of all men and women who have ever lived, and he still descends below all. And I
Yeah.
don't think that means he puts himself as worse than us. It's a different kind of wording, but he comes down and stands as an equal to all of us and says, let's go, let's walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe
I have
that's
a
what
friend
presiding
who
is.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I have a friend who talked about the word long suffering in the scriptures. We read that word long suffering, and that basically what that meant is to allow, like to allow whatever is going to be. And I think that that's how Christ descended below all things, is that he allowed everything. Like he allowed himself to be crucified, right? He went that
Wow.
deep for compassion, and that's long suffering. But yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up, and this idea of like, what would it be like for Christ to preside? And I think, you know, set aside the historical and the like the factualness of this belief, but many believe that Christ was married and was a father. I believe that. But whether or not you believe that, I think that we are missing an incredible archetype in Christ by not thinking of him as a father and husband. Like, I think
Ooh.
that there are so many layers of like application of who Christ was that we just totally ignore by not considering how would Christ have been as a husband and father. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Just that hits hard. Yeah. There's there's the chance that it's not true. He wasn't a father and husband. But if he was, like, that'd be one of the quickest things that, like, either Satan would try to hide or, get pulled out of, and maybe it's hidden for other reasons. But wow, I have actually never thought of that question before. Like, we do struggle to find examples too, right? Or like examples of how to be, because you think of the crazy paradox that, like, Jesus never actually wrote anything. We just have people talking about what he did and said. So then you got to try to, like, extrapolate that into something that
Very
you can, like,
imperfect. Yeah.
and so then it's pretty natural from there to go, well, okay, I've got a guy in my ward who I could look up to as a bishop, or, stake president, or the apostles. And then we start to look up to them, which is weird wording too. It's like, should I be looking up to them or should I look up to God? And it's like, I think we get insecure and we don't know what to do. And we start to go like, maybe I think it ultimately is our insecurity that would lead to us trying to preside over people. Like, I'm in charge of you. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
Let's talk about that for a little bit. Well, not that exact idea, but kind of a thought that I had as you were talking. So it seems to me like hierarchy is a challenging thing, right? Because the job of the masculine is to provide structure and order, and I do believe that there is a system in the heavens that could look like hierarchy, but it's not about worth or power. I think it's more about mentorship, right? So I would say that the true reflection of priesthood is I'm trying to develop my relationship with God. I have a mentor who's a man. As a man, I'm speaking as a man. I have a mentor who is a man who has a stronger relationship with God, who has more knowledge of God than I do, and I'm learning from him. And also, I have someone who's a man that I am mentoring, that I'm helping him come into a greater relationship with God. And it's this cohesive and collaborative system of men that are all working towards the same goal, right? And it's not hierarchy, because at any point in time my relationship could supersede my mentors, right? And like there is this movement within the system. I think that is what priesthood hierarchy is like meant to be, like symbolically showing us. But it kind of does sometimes become this like celebrity show of like, well, this person has this prestigious calling and therefore they're a really great guy and I've got to listen to them. And they have all this power over me. Or conversely, this person doesn't have a calling, or even maybe this person isn't even the church. They don't even have priesthood. And I think there's a lot that we misunderstand about what priesthood actually is. But can we talk about that? And like, how does that impact a man? Maybe it's kind of this idea that like patriarchy, corrupt hierarchy is painful and wrong for men as well as it is for women. Do you have any thoughts about any of that?
Ooh, yeah, super. I love your thoughts there. That's so good. Like, follow-up question to start my thoughts, I guess, is like, is it an MLM pyramid scheme? What's the shape of the connection to God? Do I connect to the guy above me, and hopefully I get people beneath me so I can have people beneath me? Like, I want people that I am better than. Or is it a direct connection, like, whatever the symbol is, like spokes on a wheel, we all connect to the center? Or is it a river of peace and truth that we can all stand in and flow with? I think some people secretly, subconsciously like the pyramid scheme because it gives you something to do. It gives you something you can get gain, which, to be a little pointed here, like if someone's looking at it like a pyramid scheme, then it must be also a secret combination, like, because it is about getting gain over other people.
And murder is the phrase, murder to get gain, right? And murder, maybe not like literally killing people, but oppressing, right? Like damaging. There's hurt that is incurred in order for someone to feel like they have power.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm hearing, like, remembering Jesus saying, if a man comes to me, I will give him living water. Not if a man, he doesn't even say, like, go find my apostles, or, I think the whole purpose of prophets and apostles is to say, thus saith the Lord, turn to him and go connect, like, get in the river and receive the flow of light and truth. And that, Jesus, I love this idea too, that, oh, this is interesting, because he says, if a man comes to me, I'll fill him with living water, and then living water will flow from his belly. So it's interesting that the river will also flow from us if we're truly in the living water, but it doesn't mean people are supposed to come to me as a source. Like, I wonder why that's just an interesting, like,
I
it's
love
going
this.
to flow from you too.
Can we talk about it for a minute? Yeah, because I love that verse, and he's talking to the woman at the well, right? This is the moment that and she's a Samaritan. She's not in the church, right? She's outside of the church, and she's there at the well, and he knows
isn't
her.
she sleeping in with like 5 husbands also?
She's had a lot of husbands, so like very not what we would say keeping the commandments, right? But she's the one that the Lord comes to and that receives him. She receives him, right? The church didn't receive him. She does. And he does. He says, if a man or woman would ask of me to drink, I would give them living waters. And it's interesting because we associate living waters with Christ, but he never said that he was the living waters. He said, I will show you to the living waters. And if we look at it symbolically, water is feminine, right? Water is this fluid, feminine force that gives life. And so there are really beautiful hints of the divine feminine that are coming through there too, where Christ is saying, and I can say this confidently because I've experienced it, and I know a lot of other women experience it too, but Christ in some way is saying, I will show you to the divine feminine. I will show you to the divine mother, and she will come and she will fill you. And that word that he uses for belly, they were talking about that we will have living waters flow from our belly. That word is also the word for womb. That we will have this womb space that opens up in us. That is this creative space, this creative potential, and that the divine feminine will flow through us so that we can create and we have access to spiritual gifts and we can enliven the world around us, right? And obviously women are connected to that, but so are men. Like Christ was the one who was saying, I have living waters from my womb. He said that, right? And so I think that it's so many layers of just this beautiful invitation, again, about partnership, that Christ wasn't saying, look at me, I'm a man. He was saying, like, come through me and let me show you the feminine. Let me show you women, right? Like this beautiful truth that had been so lost and suppressed. And in so many ways, I can point at other things too, that really a big part of who Christ was restoring this idea of the feminine for men and women.
Wow. That's kind of crazy. Like, honestly, the feeling that brings up for me is like, I don't know why. Like, I feel like I want to just like go to a mountain and ask God, like, give me more. I feel like there's just such a feeling of like, I want to know Jesus so much more. I want to know the truth so much more. I want to know our heavenly parent so much more. And can you feel there's a polarity or there's a flip that happened? Because like sometimes when I'm working through something, let's say like presiding, trying to figure it out, where it's almost like I'm in the energy of like the fearful side of presiding, right? I've been kind of trying to explore that, and there's this fear where like, oh, I'm afraid of I'm afraid I'm not good enough, right? So then that's why I preside with control and dominance. And it's interesting that what you just shared has like flipped. I feel like it flips it upside down, and all of a sudden I'm a presider that wants to receive. Yeah. As in, like, I've thought of this a little bit too, with the idea that men husbands are there to provide, preside, and protect, but it doesn't exclude God and his role. Like, because I'm not really here to protect like without God. I'm here to protect with him, like Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother and Jesus and the Spirit, right? Like, how do we preside and protect and provide for my family? Because I'm also not my provider. I'm really not. And,
Mm-mm.
I spent a lot of time trying to be the provider and feeling like, well, it's not working, but if I can let
Mm.
God be my source, if I can let the living water flow, and like water
Mm.
brings life and abundance and growth. Gosh, anyway, there's something really cool about everything you're sharing. I appreciate that. That's going
Mm.
to rock my world for a lot of time.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and I think it's the unspoken, like, after the provide, protect, preside is for the feminine, so that the feminine can come in and bring you life, right? Because that's her job, right? And I think that women, especially women in this community that I work with, like we work so hard to make sure that men know that they are needed, right? That we value the masculine. This isn't a campaign for the feminine to be all important and the masculine to just shut up and be quiet and hold and and just be there, right? Like that would be swinging the pendulum, as you talked about, where like we have this ultra masculinity, and we don't want to shift it into ultra feminine. We want the balance. We want that middle point, and women in this community who are on a healing journey, who are working on embodying their femininity, they want their husband to lead. It's not about like, oh, I want to wear the pants, I want to lead. They're so exhausted. Are you kidding? Like they're working on taking care of themselves so that they can not be burnt out all the time and not be angry and not be in the masculine, right? And also to give their husband that invitation to step into the masculine. And obviously that's a learning journey for all of us, and we're all in different places on that. But I think for the most part, women who are healing want husbands who lead. They want to empower them in that role, but they also want to feel safe, right? They want to feel like it's not going to come back to bite them, where all of a sudden they're trying to be contained and controlled and manipulated like they've done in the past, right? And so when I hear provide, protect, and preside, I think it's so important to add the that little asterisk that's so that your wife can bring you life, so that she can enliven you, so that she can be a safe place for you to land, so that you can go out with your armor on and fight the battles of trying to do those things, and then come home and like soften into her, like let her be a safe place for you, not as a mother, right? But as a wife, as a friend, as a partner, as someone that you can be vulnerable with and take accountability with and experience and create abundance with, right? Like the masculine and the feminine are both needed for creation, both in ourselves and in our partnership. And it's when we can align body and spirit in that context that we have that polarity, and it's so powerful, right? It's so strong. It's bringing heaven down to earth when we have that. I don't know. So that's just a thought that I had. And again, I don't want it to sound like, yes, men, your job is to just like do whatever your wife says, right? But like there is a factor of, if you can, I feel like if men can figure out how to provide and preside and protect in a righteous masculine capacity, then their wife can be in this feminine space that is just gonna, like, she is the living water. She's going to fill her cup and then overflow, and it's gonna go to you. Like it's going to go to make your life abundant.
It's so beautiful. I think secretly that's what every man wants. That closeness, oneness with their wife is another great uh, indicator of like, oh, is this righteous presiding or not? It's like, well, are you
Mm.
one with your wife or are you separate? Um,
Mm.
and I think it can be scary for men to admit that that's the thing they want, though, is that closeness and oneness. 'Cause, again, it's going to be super vulnerable. It's going to bring up a lot of stuff, and there's going to be a transition period because I'm thinking of times with my wife where it'd be like, she's like, oh, I feel like if I don't bring this and this and this up, it'll never get done. And I'm
Mm.
like, well, if you never give me a chance to do it, then I can't do it. You know what I mean? Like I'm already doing all these things. There's all this like drama, and we try to point to who's the problem. There will probably be a transition period, or a period that feels like you're going into the wilderness and going, okay, we got to like start from scratch.
Mm.
I've got to let my wife experience the new pattern she's trying to create, and she can hopefully let me experience the new pattern I want to create.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I have a different thought, unless you have a thought that connects there. I have like another one that
Well, go
popped
ahead.
in.
Go for it.
A really good exercise that I do with my clients a lot, men or women that work with me, is this question to visualize. So like close your eyes, imagine yourself, and then like imagine Jesus and ask yourself, where is he standing? Like how close? And there's no right answer, just like intuitively or in your heart, like how close are you standing? Is he around the corner? Is he out of sight? You can't see him. Is he 10 feet away? Is his back turned to you? Or are you like, are we standing side by side and creating together? And that's kind of the ideal. Because so many of us, I guess, when we're in a place of controlling other people, whether active manipulation or I think people pleasing is just passive manipulation. It's like the flip.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in a place of manipulating, there's a really high chance, maybe 100% chance, that I'm not standing with Jesus in a symbolic sense. I'm not creating with him. And so there's this interesting, like, that pattern is to pretend like, oh, well, God's telling me I'm supposed to preside. And it's claiming, like, I think it's maybe that's even using God's name in vain, right? Like I'm supposed to be in charge, when at the same time I'm disconnected from Jesus. And a lot of times the disconnect is I don't believe I deserve him. I'm not good enough. I need to do a lot more before I'm ready to heal, or before I can let God heal me. I don't deserve to receive. So there's this weird, like, I'm pretending to be a presider from God, but I'm also disconnected from God. That's unrighteous dominion as well. So I'd say, men, or for anyone in a leadership position, right? Like, look at where you're at standing compared to Jesus. And if you're not standing next to him, then I almost want to say it this way, just to be dramatic, like, and get off your throne, dude. You shouldn't be in the king role if you're in a place of fear and scarcity. What you want to do is get off your throne, go connect with God, go down to the river or get up in the mountains or whatever that looks like. And then once you're reconnected, go sit on your throne and let your wife sit in her throne and be one, and invite all your children to sit in their godly thrones too. Like, that's the thing, is true presiding is about reminding everyone who they are. True protecting is about protecting the soul. It's not about like, oh, I need to protect myself from how I'll feel if you make a mistake. That's pretty nasty stuff, right? I need to protect my other children from how they'll feel if you make a mistake, whatever it is. Like, true protection, true presiding, true providing is all about like seeing the eternal worth and goodness in all people.
So good. And so hard to do that if you don't see it in yourself first.
Yeah, you probably can't. You can just pretend. You can make it look like it, but
yeah, you have to do the work. I think that this is such an important conversation, especially because of some of the ways that we do things in the church and in church culture that really maybe take our eyes off the fact that this is a journey, right? That this is a process, and that there's nothing automatic about this, right? And I talk about, in my book and in other places, I talk about how when we have certain ordinances where hands are placed on heads and things are confirmed, really what those are invitations. They're invitations for us to pursue a course of living and a relationship with God that will eventually result in us experiencing the reality. And so, for example, when you're 8 years old and you get baptized, the injunction to receive the Holy Ghost, that is an invitation to a journey. And I think it's very rare that the Holy Ghost is received all at once, right in that moment. And Elder Bednar has said as much. He said that is a priesthood injunction for you to go and to seek. And I feel like priesthood ordination is similar in that, the 11-year-old has hands placed on his head and he's invited into a course of action where hopefully he will choose to develop a relationship with God so that he one day will be worthy to exercise the power of God. And I think we see that, right? We don't have 11-year-olds running around moving mountains. All right. Like that is the power of God. We don't have grown men doing that. We don't have grown men doing that either, right? If you want to talk about, well, that's ironic. Well, we don't have Melchizedek priesthood holders that are doing that either. And that's okay, as long as we recognize that there's an invitation that's been extended. And now it's your job to do the work to actualize the gifts that are tied to that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think same thing applies to the endowment invitation. I think we've lost that the endowment is a symbolic ceremony of a true journey to seek the face of God. I think we've kind of lost that idea. You look in the scriptures and you see like really cool, you got the brother of Jared goes to God and he sees the finger of God, which for those who've, been through the temple, that's like, oh, that's kind of an interesting, like, the veil is pierced and he's seeing the hand of God. And so I think the invitation is for all of us to go do that. And then just a side thought, I'm like, oh, I wonder if, because I hear in some like Native American cultures, they'll talk about women having like their version of the priesthood, or their priesthood is the physical, like the priesthood of motherhood. And it's like, oh, men get the priesthood around 11, 12 is like starting your period, the start of the invitation to motherhood, maybe that's something you've already thought of.
Yeah.
I'm brand new at
You're
thinking
good.
about that. So.
Yeah, I talk about that in my book, right? And this goes to all of the concepts that we've been talking about when we talk about the watchman on the tower, the idea that the feminine is the tower. The reason that I say that is because Mary Magdalene, so that word Magdalene, we associate that, we say that, well, she was from the town of Magdala. The only problem is that Magdala didn't exist until 400 years after Christ. It wasn't called that, right? And so, well, where did Magdalene come from? And we have accounts of Christ giving Migdala as a title to Mary in the same way that he called Peter the rock, right? Migdala means tower. And so her name was Mary the Tower. And it ties to, in the temple, the fact that women are pronounced clean from the blood and sins of this generation. Men have to become clean from the blood and sins of this generation. And so what I talk about in my book and in other places is that priesthood, it is an inborn ordination that women receive from their mothers in the womb. And we see it in our physiology. A woman is born with all of her eggs, right? She's born with all of her motherhood capacity. She starts giving life the moment that she's born, right? Even before that. I know you just had a baby girl, right? And it's not to say boys don't do the same thing, because baby boys will, they do a similar thing. But the work of the priesthood is the giving of life. And so women are facilitating in that stewardship, from conception, like as soon as they're born. It's a difference in stewardship, not worth. And I think it's important for us to realize. And I would say that menstruation is an ordinance. It's a feminine ordinance. That has to do with our priesthood, and it's why we are pronounced clean, because women come into this world in a female body. We are living the pattern of Christ, which is to sacrifice unto death out of love. And I would say that is the invitation. Yeah, wow. I would say that is the invitation for priesthood, is to learn how to do that in a masculine way, how to sacrifice unto death out of love.
That's pretty wild. I love all of that.
Thanks.
And there's a really cool feeling about just everything you're sharing. I love that line of thinking. Something I'm connecting to in our past episode, right? For those who haven't heard it, I guess. I work a lot with men who struggle with pornography, with lust, with, things surrounding that. And I'm thinking about presiding. Like, I'm almost thinking those that struggle, I don't want to feel like I'm calling them out. I don't know. I think a lot of men who struggle to preside righteously also struggle to see women as amazing. There's sort of this, like, we've already talked about like seeing them as a little bit below, or like, oh, men are better. But there's the two things like running around in my mind are that like a lot of those men struggle to see the true amazingness of women. They also struggle to see the amazingness that they are. And it's all there's like a cheap shortcut or a cheap version of that's been that's replaced it, which is, oh, but women's bodies are amazing. And there is this thing where men are so obsessed with how a woman's body can make them feel because they feel insecure. So if a woman shows me her body, it means that I am acceptable, right? It's this whole weird, like, false worth game. And so that would be my other invitation, is like, if you don't know that women are amazing, for the men out there, like, you got to start looking for the truth there. And I'm not going to pretend like I've always, like, that's been part of my journey, is realizing, like, just how incredible my wife is, my 2 daughters, and my son. Oh, dude, my son is just he's just sunshine all day. Like, everyone is amazing, but, like, I think there's a tendency for men, for some reason, it's like the threat of women being amazing could mean, oh crap, maybe I'm not amazing. But I think that's been like the 2-part truth for me, is like, I practice daily not putting myself above or below anybody, and I actively practice seeing the amazingness that's in every single person is absolutely amazing. And if you don't see it yet, then you're not seeing, you haven't found it. It is there. And imagine if every presiding leader had that. Sorry. Like, if you felt like as a presider, you knew that every person you presided, that you had a stewardship over, you knew their amazingness, then I feel like that's a really good guiding principle.
Yeah. And not amazing, like, oh, you're so great, but I'm better, like, or you're so great and I'm worse, but just that equality of, like, we're all amazing, right? And I think that women who are in this journey of healing and awakening, they want their husband to see that they're a queen, certainly, and they want to be treated that way. They also want their husband to see themselves as a king. They really do. Like, we want that partnership, that unity that comes together and says we are both powerful and we have stewardships, but we work together and we counsel together and we fight together, right? Like, we're both taking, like, we are unified. And I think that Christ and Mary Magdalene could be those archetypes if we chose to see them that way. I think most men consciously would say that they think women are amazing. I think that they need to dig a little deeper to see if they're using that as a yardstick, right? Of, like, but I'm better or I'm worse. And then I think that they also need to go even deeper than that and say, actually, do I really think that women are amazing? Because the truth is that we've received culturally in the church and outside of the church globally some very pervasive, deep narratives that women are not amazing, right? And we've kind of talked about that a little bit, I think, in the last episode and in this episode. If you think about Eve, like, do you secretly think that, like, yeah, Eve kind of messed up? Like, she was the problem. She was the reason sin came into the world. She got cursed, or can you go back and read that story and recognize Eve wasn't even around when Adam was commanded not to partake of the fruit of the tree? But she wasn't. She didn't receive that, right? Could it be possible that her deception was different? That's something I talk about in Consider Yourself as Eve, is that we have these, this is a thousands of year old tradition about Eve that has been projected onto all women. That, yes, they're so great and she's the mother of all living and she's really awesome. And also she's the one who screwed up, right? Like, we hold both. And so we need to look at that. The same for pretty much all women in history. Like, women have really been degraded in that way. And even in our own church culture, and we don't have to go too deep into this because I know it's a highly controversial thing. But we in LDS culture have grown up with a history of saying that one woman is not equal to one man. And that one man could be equal to 20 women or maybe 50 women, right? And, like, we've seen that with some of our inheritances of polygamy and other practices in the church that say, yeah, women and men are not equal, right? And so we need to look very seriously at that and say, does part of me believe that? And I say that for men and women, right? Because I think that there are women who just as well have adopted that idea of, like, oh yeah, men are more important. A man's authority, a man's word is more valuable to me than my own voice or my mother's voice or a woman's voice, right? So I just say all of that to say that again, while our conscious minds may be ready to be like, yeah, I totally believe women are amazing, or, men are amazing, or whatever, sometimes we've got to dig a little bit deeper and really say, oh, do I believe these practices and things are okay? Because these things really say that women are not equal to men.
Oh, that's awesome. I also was going to toss in with like the way we see Eve and Adam and Eve's experience and our whole world experience. I think it's important to remember the principle of agency, even premortally. Like there's also a chance, or I'd say the chances are pretty high, that everything we were experiencing in this earth is actually a result of agency before this life too. Like at the very least, or the most simple version of that is like, when you go to earth, you're all going to forget me. You're going to forget who you are. The veil is there. Crazy stuff's going to happen. Are you down to go experience the crazy stuff? Crazy culture is going to develop. Are you down to experience it? There's going to be all kinds of secret combinations, and women are going to be treated this way and men are going to be treated this way, and you're going to flip flop and you're going to fight. Are you down to go wrestle with that? And so I think that's powerful, to just be accountable and say, yeah, this is something we've all chosen into in some way. How do we go from here? I do also have, it's worth tossing this little theory in. I have a theory that some portion, or maybe a lot, of our current church culture or world culture is a reflection of premortal culture. So imagine, the families hanging out symbolically at home with like our heavenly parents. The culture's developing with whatever amount of distance or closeness we have with God. And then as we go out to college or go to earth school, that culture is going to continue. And so I think we're here wrestling with the same culture we struggled with before, just with a separation from God. And so it makes sense for it to be kind of wild,
Yeah.
But I love the idea of, it's not something that happened to us. Like, oh crap, now just because that one choice, men get treated this way and women get treated that way. It probably is related to some premortal stuff and trauma that we all went through.
Yeah, that's really profound. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and to not use that either as an excuse, right? Because we could take it too far and be like, well, we opted into it, so this is the way it's supposed to be. And it's like, no, I think that the point was, yes, we will go and experience that, and let's see how we can make it better. Let's see how we can learn from it. Let's see how we can birth heaven into earth. And not just say, well, this is the celestial world, you women, whatever, or you men are the worst, like it goes both ways. I think the invitation is like, how can we learn who God is? And I believe God is our Heavenly Father and our Heavenly Mother, just the two. And how do we embody that pattern? How do I embody that pattern in myself with balance between my own masculine and feminine? Same for you. And then how do we balance with our spouses, right? Me and my husband, you and your wife. And I think as we all come into that willingness and that practice of repentance and healing with Christ, of coming into that balance, like that is birthing Zion. Like that is bringing a heavenly culture down to earth, in a way that will transform the world. Like we will birth a new world if we can do that work.
Holy cow. You're saying some crazy stuff, and I love all of it. That's wild. I mean, I've listened to a whole bunch of episodes before this, and still you're blowing my mind. That's crazy. I hope that men can see the invitation to like the feminine, masculine, being a king and a queen. We'll see that as an invitation to see themselves as more. Because I think, I was trying to empathize with that group as you talked about, like, oh, women want their husband to see themselves as a king. And I think the voice I hear, the common voice I hear from the subconscious men, from men's subconscious is like, well, yeah, that'd be great to be a king, but I don't deserve it yet. I haven't done anything. I haven't accomplished. I haven't stopped struggling with this and that. And man, I think it just maybe it goes back to centering on Christ, and he just, all he says is, if you come to me, I will fill you with living water. Or another great one, 2 Nephi 26:25 or 25:26. I always flip it. Where it says, like, does he tell anyone to depart from him? No, he says, come unto me, all ye ends of the earth, men and women. That's kind of fun. That includes men and women. And he says he will come in like receive milk and honey without money and without price. So that little ending on there is it is not something you pay for. There's no price. There's no money exchange. Jesus is saying, come to me. I think of like farmer's market. Like he's at the farmer's market with milk and honey, best quality. It's organic, super awesome. And I think I think every man struggles with this so much that you go there and you say, I'm ready for milk and honey. And you pull out your wallet to pay for it. And he's like, oh, it doesn't work that way. You cannot pay for this. It's been paid for. And we go away sad and we go to another table and say, well, I guess I'll go buy someone else's stuff. But I think Jesus is inviting all of us to step closer to him and to receive through, I love your phrasing of like birthing heaven into earth. And like God is wanting to give us, our heavenly parents are wanting to give us the truth for the masculine, the feminine, for oneness, for bringing heaven to earth. Man, that is just a crazy phrase. I'm going to be thinking about that all day. It's just beautiful. Like the invitation is so big and so open, and men can still have the like joy of like, because every man's got that in them where they want to hunt successfully, whatever that means symbolically, right? Or we want to hone our craft, or we want to be skillful and whatever, like we want to like do those things, increase our skills and be awesome, but like switch the order. Allow yourself to be whole in Christ, to be filled with his love and his living water, and then go have a ton of fun. Go chop down some trees, man. And I'm talking to myself for sure. Like I can be at peace right now, and I can find oneness with my wife, and we can go create. We don't have to wait until we've solved everything to start having worth.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much. And I think it has a lot to do with the idea of becoming like a little child. When you are in childhood, you're in more feminine energy, and the feminine is about receiving, whereas the masculine is all about giving, right? And so if you think about a newborn baby, you think about your newborn baby, she's not thinking like, oh, I need to earn my milk. I need to earn cuddles. I need to earn my worth, right? Like she's willing to receive. She's just like, yeah, like, thank you. Right. And I think that part of becoming like a little child is tapping back into that feminine energy, again, both men and women, of I am willing to receive without money and without cost, of yes, I have a divine identity. I have a divine sense of worth. I am a part of God. I am in God and God is in me. And because of that, I am going to pursue my life's work from a place of abundance and from a place of joy. Like when we start with that feminine power of identity, it changes everything. And I think that that is what both men and women have needed, right? And that we have been starving for, is that we've been burning ourselves out trying to earn our worth. And our worth was never something that we could earn. It was only something that we could accept and say, yes, that's true. Like I am worthy. So anyway, Kyson, I've loved talking to you. So fun to talk to you. This is such a great conversation. I feel like we're probably going to need to have more in the future. But we'll kind of end this here today. Do you have any last words, any last invitations you'd like to share?
Just like maybe just to have compassion for, hopefully we can have compassion for both sides. Like it's a hard thing. We all come to earth in that state of like no ego, a little baby that's receiving. And then there is a point where somebody, whether it's parents or teachers or whatever, there's a point where someone goes, oh, now you're too old to receive without earning it. Now you need to earn your worth. And it's a confusing thing for a kid. And so as a human family, like we're figuring it out as we go. So I'm excited for the future. I feel like it's possible, and it's going to be a little hard,
Yeah.
Cool. That's like a weird way to end my thoughts. Like, let's do it.
This is okay. And you know what? I think that this is the Lord's work, right? Like the Lord wants partnership. God says, I'm no respecter of person. Men, women, black, white, bond free, doesn't matter. Come unto me. Right. And so I think it is daunting, especially to overcome all the trauma and the false beliefs, and on an individual level and a collective level, right? Like we're doing it for our generations too, not just us, but everyone that came before us. So it is very daunting. But we're here for it. Like, I'm here for it. I came here for this. Like, I'm so on board with it, and I'm sure you are too. And so thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your ministry and the work that you're doing. If anyone is interested, I do feel to share my book, Consider Yourself as Eve, A Guide to Spiritual Development for Women and the Men Who Love Them. I very purposefully also addressed it to men because I do think that understanding the feminine, again, you can't understand the feminine without contextualizing it with the masculine, and vice versa. That's why we've talked about both this entire time. Even though, like, we're trying to focus on the masculine,
Yeah.
but you got to talk about the feminine too in order to understand that. And so I would invite anyone who's interested to check that out. I talk about Eve, that, I kind of glossed over that, but I swear it's in scripture. It's in all of our scriptures. Eve wasn't created yet when that commandment was given, right? So that's something to ponder about and think about. But I talk about priestesshood. I talk about partnership, and what it looks like in marriage and all these things. So I just invite anyone to check that out if you haven't already. But this was an awesome conversation. Again, Kyson, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan.